Happiness through curiosity on the Ranveer Show. How's podcasting been for you? Because we're having this chill conversation now where people will actually get to know AC rather than us having geopolitical conversations and all that. And we've done so many podcasts together.
We have, yeah.
I actually think that you were one of the big gear switches in my own podcasting journey. You introduced me to geopolitics. Science-based podcast began with you, etc. But yeah, my question now to you is, how is your podcasting journey? When you started a podcast, I saw that when I started mine, it shifted a lot of things within me. I don't know if you're going through the same.
I may be going through the same. So my perspective, my thing was that I did not want to copy anybody. I did not want to compete with anyone. I wanted to do my own thing. So initially I started doing these online podcasts, online conversations, across the screen. You have the screen in front of you and you're talking to somebody across the screen, a Zoom call or whatever. That's how it started. And I noticed that, it's interesting. You get lots of interesting information, but there's a lack of connection. There's a lack of, the chemistry over there because you're not face to face and there's a slight time delay and all that. So it works well when there's somebody on the other side that you know well. So that works well. But when you're talking to somebody for the first time, it doesn't always work very well. So I did a bunch of these virtual podcasts. And then I think last year I decided I'm going to do only face-to-face podcasts. And that's when everything kind of changed. So I started traveling to various places. I don't have a studio like you. I've not invested in that, thus far at least. So I would typically just take a hotel suite somewhere, book it for 5, 6, 7 days, whatever it is, and set up a little mini studio there and do a podcast there. And I'd line up a bunch of people and I would do that. So that was a very different experience. And it kind of, it's been a journey for me. I've understood a lot of things, how interpersonal relationships work, the perspectives of people who are in very different domains and fields. I've seen that. So it's been a very educative journey for me. I mean, I obviously am a very well-read person, but this is a whole different kind of education. So I was gained a lot from that.
This is what I want to add. This is hardcore education that you go through as a podcasting host. I don't think people understand that. Just the download of information that podcast hosts get. It's very heavy duty because we are very aware that not all our consumers are consuming all the podcasts. Yeah. The only people who are consuming all the podcasts are the hosts and their teams, which is weird, but it's also a very cool experience. And the reason I want to highlight this is because of most of the people I've met, you're in the top 1 percentile of photographic memory oriented individuals. I feel like you have a photographic memory because you're able to dish out a lot of data. And that, I think everyone who's listening to this podcast for AC knows this about you. Like that, you're able to actually pull out data from a lot of deep places, which the average podcast guest is not able to do. So the moment I saw you doing podcasts, that was my first thought that, okay, now we're going to see Super Saiyan AC in probably a year's time, in 2 years' time. Because I anticipate you're going to retain 90 to 100% of the information that you're getting downloaded onto the show. And I am able to retain stuff to a certain degree, but definitely not to the degree you're able to retain it up to. Have you ever looked at it this way?
Well, one thing I've realized, I've gained an immense amount of respect for the kind of work that you do. You do so many podcasts. And one thing as a podcast host is that you have to stay super focused. You have to hang on to every word and you have to, look at the person, what they're saying, think about it, and then think about what's the next, where do you take this next? So it's a super focused kind of thing that you have to do. It's a super intense thing. For the viewer, it's just casual listening sometimes, okay? But as the podcast host, you have to be totally focused. And so that's a very important thing. And the other thing that I've seen is that I've tended to follow my interests when it comes to podcast guests. So I did a number of classical dancers and artists and all that. The podcast views weren't great, but I enjoyed that. So I've kind of tended to follow what my interests are. I am interested in so many different things. I'm interested in sports, I'm interested in martial arts, in classical music, classical dance, and so many things. So I've followed that, but also I do kind of now understand what the viewers want and what the viewers don't often want to see, or where the interests aren't there. Maybe it's because of the kind of channel that I have that you have this sort of thing, but that's what. So I have gained an immense amount of respect for podcast hosts like you. When it comes to you sitting in front of me and I'm talking about all kinds of things, it must be challenging to just focus on what I'm saying and
not with you because we've chilled so much. It's different with you You're in that
I know what
upper
you mean.
category. But you're right. It's very challenging to meet people for the first time, especially if the person comes from a dark domain like military veterans, people associated with the world of crime. Dark, for the lack of a better word, heavy, more fierce domain. Tantrics,
wow.
Like just these kind of podcasts can get a little heavy duty. And then you have to do it every day.
Right, indeed. Yeah.
I think that's what people don't understand. There is a slightly arrogant part of me where I am proud that I shoot every day.
Yeah,
and I think that's like, that's not easily replicable.
It's not actually. Yeah. It's easier said than done. I mean, people may imagine that it's easy to just sit there and ask a few questions and do a podcast. It's not easy at all. It's extremely challenging, mentally very draining. I'm sure after each podcast shoot, you must be feeling mentally drained and exhausted.
I feel calories get burnt.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you know what? That's an interesting parallel in chess. So whenever there's a chess tournament and there's a bunch of grandmasters, and let's say the tournament is it's a week long, you will find that each of these grandmasters at the highest level, they typically lose about 10 kilos in a week's time just sitting and playing chess.
Damn.
So it's all the mental effort that's been all those calories being consumed by the brain, the mental effort. Yeah. So I'm pretty sure lots of calories get burnt as the host.
Yeah. You get very drained if you have a day full of, forget day, even if you have 2 podcasts in a day, you're great till that second podcast is almost ending. The moment it ends, there's an energy drop. Sometimes there are tears. Sometimes there is just a kind of, I want to give up now moment. And then you sleep, you wake up the next day. My producer sends me my list of, research points and suggestions for the show. And then back to normal.
Back on the train.
Yeah. You get Saturday, Sunday to chill.
Yeah, that's good. You should always have some kind of time off somewhere, Yeah.
What's your time off at this stage in life? Because you actually lived a very interesting life that people don't know about. I know this because we hang out. I think people only know your geopolitics, science and history side and whatever you expose on the internet. But you're just an interesting bro to have if someone can unlock all that stuff about you, which I've gotten to know about through the conversations we have post our recordings.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
We've had some pretty intense conversations, but I've actually gotten to know you. That's my intention with this episode as well. You can begin with like how are your weekends right now? How's life? How are you thinking about your future in some ways? And then we can go back to your childhood because that's a whole other story.
So look, I don't have weekends. I have days. And I typically have a calendar that I follow. So I have my calendar planned out for the next, let's say, 2 months. Pretty solid, and then next few months maybe a little hazy, a little vague, and I just take a look at the calendar for today and I just follow it like a slave. That's what I do, and I have a day in the week in which I plan the next week's calendar and that sort of thing, and often a month's calendar as and when things fall into place. That's what I do. I typically don't know what day of the week it is. If you ask me what day is it today, I'll know the date but not the day.
Is this content creation speaking, or have you always been like this?
It's content creation speaking. I've not always been like this. So I've worked jobs, and then when you're working jobs, you know what day it is because you know when the weekend is and all that. So now I have no idea what day it is. I just know the date and I know what I have to do today and that sort of thing. And I typically, it may not be a very healthy thing to do, but I typically work 7 days a week. Kind of. I'm always working on something. So when I do podcasts, I don't do podcasts every day like you're doing, like twice a day or whatever your schedule is. I typically have a podcast shooting trip like once in 2 months in which I shoot like 8 or 10 podcasts maybe. And then I'm done and I'm releasing just one podcast every weekend. So it's a pretty chill schedule for me when it comes to podcasting. That's how it is. But I'm always researching something. I do geopolitical analysis videos and other things, and I do live streams. So I always have something on my plate, and I'm working on other things as well. So it's always that I always have something that I'm working on. Typically it's reading, typically it's research, typically it's formulating things and so on and so forth. So it's always something going on.
What are you thinking about in terms of the future? And the reason I ask you this is there is this theory out there, and I'm not sure whether it's a true theory or not because I'm blindsided to this.
Okay.
Because the theory is about content creation. And because I've been doing content creation so long that I've probably lost that perspective on what life outside of content creation is like. If you're not a content creator, what is your life like? I don't know. Because my whole adult life has been content creation.
Right.
So they say that everyone's trying to become a content creator, A to Z. Because earlier the angle was, build your personal brand. Nowadays they say that, no, dude, even if you're getting hired, even if you want to build something, perhaps 10 years later, you should begin marketing yourself now. Is that the truth about the world? Like, what do you think? Because if that is the case, I don't doubt the introverts, but I'm curious to know how they would go about it as well. And you're introverted.
I am introverted. I'm kind of an ambivert. With some people, I'm really open, typically reserved, that sort of thing. But yeah, what you're saying is true. I mean, the philosophy or the wisdom out there today is that everybody should create content. If you're shy, if you don't want to show your face somewhere, write a blog or write a post on LinkedIn or be on Twitter. But you got to create some content, and people, that should be your resume essentially. Your future employer should go to your LinkedIn, your Twitter, or whatever it is, and they should be able to get a good perspective of who you are based on that. So everybody is getting into some kind of content creation. When it comes to podcasting, I get the feeling podcasting has turned into a cottage industry in India. Everyone's getting into podcasting. Everybody has a podcast. I mean, absolutely no disrespect meant to anybody, but it seems like, and you're the pioneer. You are the guy who started it all, and now everyone's jumping on the bandwagon. So maybe we need to find something new to do, perhaps, or maybe continue the podcast, but in our own unique ways. So I think that's the kind of thing we have out there today about introverts. Well, introverts can always write. I think introverts are actually typically good at expressing themselves in writing as opposed to verbally. So there's always something for everyone, I guess. So yeah, there's a lot of content creation happening right now. I don't think there's ever been a time when more content comes out in the public domain on the internet every single day the way it's happening right now. So there's a ton and a avalanche of content out there every day.
Yeah. I'm going to highlight a piece of criticism that both you and me get. You to a lesser degree because of your photographic memory in many ways. Me to a much larger degree. And I'm not making excuses here, but I've thought about why I've been doing this thing that's not being received well. So criticism I get is that I don't quote data and proofs enough.
Okay.
When I can, which is why we've actually got the screen
to
keep pulling up stuff. I met a neuroscience professor at an event I was at recently. Very positive. He watches the show. He's like, you need to start catching your guests and not letting them move on in conversation and asking them to actually bring out data about what they are saying.
Okay.
Like if they can show data, it just makes their argument stronger.
Okay.
Then of course, even after they've shown data, if you want, you can wrestle with them or let the conversation move forward. And that's your nuance as an interviewer. I took this feedback well because it's coming from a professor of neuroscience who is a deep thinker, very obviously. And he watches the show.
Okay.
So it's from a positive place. It's not a Twitter troll who's at it.
Yes.
We've got the screen. Do you receive this kind of a data-based criticism? Do you accept it?
So the point is this. See, I get this all the time, especially in YouTube shorts and all. I make a certain statement and they're saying, where's the proof? Why don't you show some proof? Or I do a live stream and I, answer, let's say 30 questions over a 2-hour period. People say, where's the proof? Show the evidence. My point is this. You're doing a live show. If I interrupt the show and start pulling up data and information, it's going to be a 5-hour show and people are going to doze off and people are going to lose interest. If you want information, take it from me. It may be flawed, it may be right. Do your own research, do your own due diligence. You have Google at your fingertips. Who's stopping you? Yeah. That's how you learn. The conversation just doesn't flow. When you just stop and say, okay, show us the data. I go there and we look at a bunch of stuff and then we pull up this. No, this. Let's take the other one. That kills the entire flow of the conversation. So podcasts are, this is not a lecture. When you have a professor who's giving a lecture, that person has the textbook with him. He says, refer to page number so-and-so, or refer to this textbook chapter so-and-so, and look it up. Do your homework. That's what he tells the students. Or there's this equation on the blackboard. Now you solve it for yourself. That's your homework. That's how you learn. So that's the same philosophy. I'm going to talk about stuff. Sometimes I may be wrong. Sometimes I may slip up. It's happened. Okay, I may say the wrong thing sometimes once in a while. That's always a risk that you run when you're doing a live show or you're doing a podcast. Sometimes you mess up somewhere. But it's up to the viewer. If they really want to learn, then take this piece of information, do your own research and find out what the actual truth is, whether this person is, whatever he or she is saying is right or wrong. That should be the way you should approach a podcast if you really want to learn something. So that's my perspective.
I think people hold us up against journalism degrees in terms of, I think we are viewed in some way as new age journalists. I don't think we view ourselves as that at all. We're just content creators. We're having fun in this job. We want to bring you the truth because we are also an audience member at the end of the day. We're as interested in these topics as you are. what you're saying is exactly right. And that's the thought that I am wrestling with in my head as well. That my charm as a podcaster is the state of flow that I can put my guest into.
There you go. Yeah.
Am I right?
Absolutely.
And it breaks the flow when I keep referencing the screen.
Yeah.
Unless it's like another round where it's a pre-planned experiment, etc.
Yes, if it's a pre-planned thing, then you have to sit together for an hour or so, chalk out, go through all the points and keep all the references ready. Well, that also kills the vibe of the show because then it's just a lecture. It's not a free-flowing conversation. There's no spontaneity to it. The charm is gone. You just know what each other that you're gonna talk about. So there's no fun in that.
Yeah. This is what people don't understand about the difficulty of being a content creator actually is. But did I see? I messed up my grammar, I think, right now. Like,
did you?
I got a feedback loop in my own head.
Okay.
But my point is, it is difficult to run a content creation career because you're getting so many inputs. Your mind wrestles with thoughts just like this. In terms of right now, you kind of disagreed with what he said. These same two things have been going on. There's a micro AC in my head and there's a micro Dr. Avatramani in my head.
Okay.
Battling it in terms of, hey, what's the next step you should take for the podcast? And this has just been how the 8 years have panned out. So it takes a little bit of a mental toll on you for sure. Like,
for me, it doesn't.
Yeah.
I'm pretty clear that I'm not gonna go out and pull up references and do all that stuff. It's the viewer, if they're interested, they can look it up, do their own due diligence, verify what I'm saying. If I'm wrong, then put a comment out that here is the truth, here are the links, here's the references. So that's how I see it. The problem is that the education system has made everybody very enamored of spoon feeding. The education system, especially in India, doesn't teach anyone to think critically. They just don't know how to think and how to verify or cross-check facts. They just don't know how to do it. They can't even do a simple Google search. If they do Google search, they don't know what's an authoritative source and what's not. They'll give you Wikipedia references and that sort of thing. I do not blame the viewers for this. They are victims of the education system. They don't know how to think. They are wrestling with what do I believe? What do I not believe? And then they go all emotional, and whoever resonates the most emotionally from content creation perspective, they're going to just listen to what he or she says. And everybody else is wrong. That's the sort of thing it is, because we have not been taught how to think critically. So I totally empathize with the viewers and I totally understand where they're coming from. But I am very clear that I am not going to waste my time, during a live stream or doing anything, throwing out a bunch of links and bunch of references, because that takes double the time. Do it yourself. Learn, evolve, all that. If I write a book, obviously I'll give all the references. If I do a course, obviously I'll give all the references. But during a live stream, during a 20-minute video, I'm not going to do that. Maybe I'll put a few out there, but not a whole lot. I'm pretty clear about this.
This thing you said about the Indian education system.
Yeah.
It's something that sticks out on so many levels. It's not just this Sharma ji ke beta ki mentality. Have you heard of Sharma ji ka beta?
No.
Sharma ji ka beta mentality means a lot of parents tell their own kids that, why have you come third in your class? Look at Sharma ji's beta, he's come first.
He's come first. Okay, that way.
Now that causes a lot of psychological trauma on that child. And this happens to so many Indian kids who grow up into adults who constantly compare themselves to like other adults. Now, if you're a good human being, you'll understand that, oh, my heart is making me compare myself to that person. That's okay. I guess this is my own childhood trauma. And I don't actually need to voice out vitriol or venom onto that person's reality. But the thing is, if you have a certain level of anger / actual envy inside you, you'll want to voice it out. You'll want to pull other people down. And if you have a very, very high level of it, you become an X-troll.
X-troll.
Yeah, not EX, like Twitter troll.
Okay, X-troll. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
I think that's where the garbage of society rests on the internet. In terms of the people who have the maximum amount of venom become Twitter trolls. And often you'll see with Twitter trolls that if you scan through their Twitter feeds, there's too many tweets tweeted out in a day, firstly.
Okay.
Too many tweets. And at least once a day, they'll criticize or troll something. I think that's the nature of the platform also. It's just how that platform is built. It's not the vibe that Instagram is built with.
Okay.
That's honestly what I feel it is, which actually means it has a lot of great content as well. When you read an insane thread on Twitter, when you get insane life lessons, insane insights, when you get into the mind of the world leaders, the actors, the athletes. That's the positive side of Twitter. But the negative side is this unfulfilled adults who want to only be within their own echo chambers and are not open to other perspectives.
Right. I think Twitter makes it very easy to do that. So the way I see it is that if you were to meet somebody face to face, you would be polite with them, even if you disagree with them. You would be respectful. You would not start a fight right there. But it's so easy to do that on Twitter. Just send out a 180 character tweet. And there you have it. You can, release some of that pent up whatever that you may have within you. So it's very easy to do that. But on the other side, Twitter has so much great content, so many tremendous threads. You get to hear the views of world leaders, like you just said. So for me, I tweet very often, very, very less these days. I retweet various people once in a while, but I tweet very less. These days I'm subconsciously maybe I'm using Twitter as a news gathering mechanism, a place where you can see what's happening in the world wherever it is in real time, and it kind of adds to the context that you have when it comes to geopolitical events and politics and whatnot. So that's how I see Twitter these days. I don't tweet so much these days, and I try to remind myself that it's very easy to react over here, and you may end up not. Maybe wording something clumsily and then people may interpret it in some other way. So you got to be careful on all these platforms. So that's how I see Twitter. I mean, YouTube, it's your own thing. You can tailor it to whichever way you want. And there are so many other platforms. Instagram, it's an interesting distribution channel, you could say. There's LinkedIn as well, where people have all these very specific kind of posts and all that. It's essentially for hiring and selling and stuff like that. Maybe not selling so much, hiring, and it's a job market, essentially, online job market. So each platform has its own nuances, but Twitter is where all the angry people come to fight. That's what I see, yeah.
Hey, if you enjoyed this clip from the Ranveer Show, we've uploaded a ton of other clips related to a ton of other topics. So explore the channel because there's something for everyone.